Welcome to Pax Europiana here from Srebrenica Genocide Memorial Center. It's a very good exhibition, and the Memorial Center is really very good. I want to show you some of it. This is an old Yugoslavian factory. Here you will see it over there, and the whole complex is a battery factory, and it was then the Canadian and later the Dutch battalion. They were meant to keep here the people of Srebrenica safe in the Srebrenica safe zone. I will tweet some of these findings in the coming days, and I will show you all this. And the conclusion is they failed. They failed. Yeah. Mr. Rutte came now here for the 27th anniversary commemoration to apologize, and that's very good. He should do so, because his soldiers, the Dutch soldiers, failed the people later, and they documented very well. They made a party in Zagreb, and they say it was for the relief of stress, and they were happy to survive. Yes, okay, but we have to ask ourselves, it was their duty to protect, and they failed. Obviously, it's not just the Dutch, it's a whole UN system here which failed, and the brutality of the Bosnian Serb army backed by Milosevic was in full force here. They have a very good documentation material here. It's really a well done documentation center. You can see some of it yourself. I didn't make a video now inside, and I think it's very much recommended to go and to share the pain with this lady who guided me through. Her grandfather was killed here, and she lost relatives. She is herself now too young. It's now 27 years ago. Obviously, the horrors of that day, it was a 10-day horror, 2 weeks basically, where the Bosnian Serbs went on rampage, and they had the genocidal intention from day one. The documents prove it very well, and they were from the day one basically taking over this camp, bringing the people here, separating them, and then putting them either in the Drin River or disposing their bodies in the forest and burying them in mass graves. I will now walk over to the cemetery, because there's the cemetery of the victims of genocide, and here in this hall the Turkish government has paid for some of the renovations here, and you see the facility. This must be horrible to be victim and in such a facility, and to be in the hands of a butcher like Mladic, the killer. I hope he will be in hell. He has well deserved it, together with Milosevic, Karadzic, and all the other terrible monsters who have committed this crime, claiming that they somehow defend the Bosnian Serbs. Nobody attacked them. Nobody wanted to kill them. It was very clear who wanted to kill whom, and that's the Bosnian Serb army led by Mladic and Karadzic, and ultimately by Milosevic, the killer. They had this genocidal intention from the day one. And here again, geography helps to understand what happened. Obviously, this Srebrenica valley, here we are in Potečari. Srebrenica is up there. It's very close to the Drin River, up here in the northern part of the Drin River. And they wanted from day start to have this integrated in Serbia. It's not a secret. They want that since 200 years, since the Vienna Congress. They thought it's unfair that this is not happening, because they have always this Serb narrative of huge unfairness. We are unfair to them. The Americans, the Germans, the Austrians, everybody is unfair to them, and that's enough justification, this perceived unfairness for genocide. Yeah, that's basically what I also experienced in Visegrad when I discussed it. They really believe that the world is unfair, the imperialist world is unfair to them, so genocide is justified. And then they put people in such kind of facilities here, really very bad, and then they torture them, kill them, they abuse them, they rape them. This is how they do it, the Bosnian Serbs at that time. Now they are better, but this narrative is still very present. Yeah? And if they would have the means and the political backing and the military, fiscal, political means, some of them would do it again, I have no doubt. And in these dark chambers, for example, some of my Twitter followers would certainly like to put me in such a chamber. if they could. Yes, this is the reality. They would do that. And they have done it. They have done it here at this side. Yeah. This was the site of genocide. And when you think about it, that some of the genocide deniers, for example, Mr. Peter Handke, he is quite an evil person. He denies these things. And some Mr. Vucic has come once, they chased him away. Mr. Rutte, at least, you know, he was now here. I want to applaud him for that. That was a good decision. But I think every Serb politician should be here and they should repent their sins. And that's the only way we can accept them in the European Union. Once they have been here, they bent their knees at the victims and they said very loudly, apologize. For Montenegro, the mayor, he was now here, and then I will also respond to him because he is definitely not so on the spot with the point he made. Yeah? So we will have to discuss this with the mayor of Podgorica on Twitter, and I will do this debate. Yes, the 8,000 plus victims demand an apology also from the Dutch. That happened now. Active retribution from the Dutch for failing to protect. Yeah. Active retribution from the European Union, because ultimately they believed in the West, in NATO, in the EU. We shall never fail them again. I hope so. Because when people put their life in our hands and we say this is UN protected zone, and then we negotiate and we let them be taken away by the genocidal Serbs, and that Mladic was a killer. I mean, even the most naive Dutchman knew that by that stage, because it was already 92, 93, 94, 95. We are talking about July 95. Yeah? Everybody knew what is going on with the victims of the Bosnian Serbs, since Omaska and many of the atrocities already happened in the spring of 92. So don't tell me you didn't know. This General Kekkoman or whatever it's called. This is a very tragic site. It's well documented, the crimes against humanity committed by the Bosnian Serbs, but in the name of the Serb nations, yeah, by a widely shared narrative of a genocidal intent to cleanse this part of Bosnia, because they termed the people Turks. Oh man, they were Bosnian Slavs, they were not Turks. And even then, you shouldn't kill Turks as well. By the way, if you are a Christian, you shouldn't kill at all. You know? To claim Christianity as the mantle for murder is for me very, very bizarre view of Christianity and humanity. And however you call it, it's genocide. And you know, when this kind of extreme right-wing ideology, which comes via Putin and via Milosevic and via now Vucic, is petering into the mainstream, it's very dangerous, because then suddenly state-backed violence can happen with genocidal consequences. Because never forget, it was Yugoslavian weapons they had, it was Yugoslavian facilities, it was Yugoslavia producing all the weapons. They were inheriting this, all this industrial and military arms and weapons from Yugoslavia. And so this inheritance is very much to be understood in the context of this genocide. So I also criticize very much all the people from this Yugoslavian inheritance. They say they are great partisan, and they always say our biggest success, partisan, the victory against the Nazis. Yes, but what's the meaning of resistance against the Nazis? Is that you are against genocide and against fascism, and then you cannot endorse some kind of fake Christianity, genocidal kind of activities of Mladic, who certainly thinks of himself as a Christian or as a good Serb. He is a monster. Yeah. He should die. I mean, these people, I'm not in favor of capital punishment, but he should not be ever released. You know, this is a war criminal of the worst extent. He should be forever in prison. Like we put crazy people also forever in prison, in security lockdown. I mean, hey man, people who order this, what he would order the next time. Anyhow, don't get me started with this. I will go over there, I think. I will also Of course, we'll visit now the grave, but there's no need to drive over there. I will go and walk over there. Yes, it was then the death march. Some of them tried to escape, but they chased them down. They chased them down over the hills. They knew that the Bosnian army is in Tuzla. They might escape if they reach Tuzla in safety. They tried to escape on the long march, but it turned into a death march for thousands of them. This is how it was. And then they threw the bodies into some pits or in the Drin River. When I'm in Visegrad and I posted that the Drin River shall never be red, full of blood of the Bosnian Muslims, then some called me that I'm exciting violence or whatever. I'm not. I'm for peace. But peace requires not the UN is good for governance and all these things, but ultimately you need real military force like NATO. Only NATO can keep the peace in Europe and in the world as much as possible. And we need the same, like we have betrayed the Bosnians and the Kosovars for too long. We finally helped them. But when you see the UN has failed these people, they came here under that sign. They thought they were safe, but they were not. In this industrial monster, the monster Mladic has killed his victims. And he did it as the instrument of the Bosnian Serb state and ultimately of the Bosnian state, of the Serbian state. And ultimately he was backed up by a narrative which is widely shared, and widely shared even today by many young people in Serbia and among the Bosnian Serbs, that they are justified because the injustice of the West, the American imperialism, Peter Handke is encouraging such thinking. You see how terrible they are, how it all leads to genocide when you think like that America is injustice, is leading to imperialism, and then it ends up like that. This is the thinking which leads to such genocide. This toxic mix of left-wing and nationalism is very, very dangerous. This is very dangerous. This hate against America, this hate against capitalism, this protectionist, nationalistic, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, obviously, they're all anti-Semitic as well, because this anti-Americanism is often just a cover for anti-Semitism, same like for the anti-capitalism. And then they have this kind of narrative of victimhood, which is very much the basis of the Germany had the same after World War I. They started World War I. There was no need to attack Belgium and France after what happened in the Balkans. They very much escalated everything in full manner in the idea they had to defend themselves, and then they were defeated after 4 years, and then they felt that the world is injustice. The world's unjust to them. I mean, have a grip. The same is with the Serbs and with the Russians. And we are now here, hello, hi. We are now here in the consequences of all this. Yeah. It's already 95, that's 27 years ago. But when you look back and you see here the victims and you look at the situation, how it was and how it is today in 2022, when we have another Srebrenica in Mariupol and in other places where Putin thinks on the same ideological basis. The injustice of the West, American world, it's unjust. And then he justifies his genocidal wars with that. It's like Hitler did it in the 30s, like Milosevic in the 90s. It's the same ideological underpinning of a claim of an unfair world, being biased against, in that case, Germany, or then Serbia, now Russia, and then they go into this fascist, toxic, nationalist, communist mind, and they do that with full justification on their own kind of narrative, and the result is massive death. Massive. Hundreds and thousands of people killed in the wars, and 10,000, of course, 100,000 people in the Bosnian war. And it's not a civil war, and I also make from time to time the mistake, you shouldn't repeat this kind of mistakes, because the reality is these are really very brutal genocidal killers who just find the explanation justifying everything, murder and genocide, with their hatred against the West, against the free world, claiming innocence and killing other people. And imagine just yourself one day to be in such a situation. It's of course absolute horror. And you see here, this is the Memorial Center. I will guide you through this Memorial Center. And here, this is Srebrenica Potenciare Memorial Cemetery for the victims of the 95 genocide. Yes, I will not make a video, just a short glance. This is the result. First comes this narrative of injustice, then this hyperbole of exaggerated nationalism, and then the tools by socialism or other etatist philosophy, and then they just need one point, and then they go genocidal. And the result you can see at the cemeteries of Europe. It would be good if we learn, but as we see in the Ukraine war, we sadly don't. But never give up. We must be simply more united and being stronger together in Europe and in NATO. That's the lesson from this genocide. Because we could have helped these people, we could have saved them if we were ready to intervene earlier. This blame we always have to put on our shoulder. I apologize for the European weakness, but this time in 2020 we do it again in Ukraine, but we will not fail the Bosnians at least. They will be in EU and NATO, and they will be safe, and ultimately the same safety, security will be also available for the Ukrainians. Slava Ukraine, and for the heroes of Mariupol, and for peace in the world by strong Western unity and resolve. Yes, now for the cemetery, and I will keep you posted. And visit this touching and important memorial here in Potocari, Srebrenica. And that's it. The message of never again. It should never happen again. And we must be more united to stop genocide early on. Bye from Paxa Rupiana.